I've been a night shift nurse for over 6 years, and you get used to the quiet hum of the machines and the dim lighting of the hallways. But one rainy Tuesday, things felt different. I was stationed on the 4th floor, which was mostly recovery rooms. Around 3 a.m., the call light for room 412 started blinking. The problem was, room 412 was supposed to be empty. The patient had been discharged earlier that afternoon. Thinking it was just a technical glitch, I walked down the long, silent corridor to reset the button. When I entered the room, the air was freezing. I looked at the bed, and the sheets were ruffled as if someone had just been lying there. I pressed the reset button and turned to leave, but then I heard a wet, raspy breathing coming from the bathroom. I froze. I whispered, "Hello," and the breathing stopped instantly. Suddenly, the heavy bathroom door began to creak open very slowly. I didn't wait to see who or what was behind it. I bolted out and watched the door from the nursing station monitor. No one ever came out of that room, and when security checked it 10 minutes later, the room was bone dry and completely empty. I still refused to go near that wing alone. During my time as a night porter, my job was to transport equipment and occasionally move deceased patients to the morgue in the basement. The basement was always the creepiest part of the hospital, unfinished concrete walls and flickering fluorescent lights. One night, I was heading down to the basement alone to drop off some linens. The elevator stopped on the 2nd floor, which was the intensive care unit. The doors opened, but no one was there. Just as the doors were closing, a frantic woman in a hospital gown slipped inside. She stood in the corner behind me, staring at the floor. I asked her which floor she needed, but she didn't say a word. She just pointed down. As we passed the 1st floor and headed toward the basement, I saw her reflection in the polished metal of the elevator door. Her face was pale, and she had no surgical wristband. When the bell dinged for the basement, I stepped out and held the door for her. I turned around to tell her she shouldn't be down here, but the elevator was completely empty. There was nowhere she could have gone. Later that night, I found out a woman matching her description had passed away in the ICU exactly at the moment she stepped into that elevator with me. I worked as a late-night security guard for a massive metropolitan hospital. My main task was to walk the perimeter and ensure all the side entrances were locked. One night, while walking past the old psychiatric wing, which had been closed for renovations for months, I looked up at the 3rd floor window. I saw the silhouette of a tall, thin man standing perfectly still, looking down at me. I thought it might be a squatter or a construction worker who had stayed late, so I called it in and headed up to investigate. The wing was pitch black and smelled like stale dust. I used my flashlight to scan the rooms. When I reached the room where I had seen the figure, the door was locked from the outside with a heavy chain. I looked through the small glass pane on the door and saw the man. He was standing in the exact same spot, facing the window with his back to me. I shouted for him to turn around, but he didn't move. I fumbled with my keys to unlock the chain, and the second the metal clinked, the man vanished into thin air right before my eyes. I searched the entire floor, but there were no other exits, and the dust on the floor was completely undisturbed. There weren't even any footprints. I quit a week later. Working the night shift as a telemetry nurse at St. Jude's during the 2024 flu surge meant living in a perpetual state of exhaustion, but what happened in room 412 still haunts my waking hours more than the fatigue ever could. I was monitoring the central station when the call light for 412, a room that had been vacant since an elderly patient passed away 3 hours prior, began to blink with an insistent, rhythmic pulse. Figuring it was just a mechanical glitch or a short in the wiring, I walked down the dim, sterile hallway, the scent of antiseptic heavy in the air, only to find the room ice cold and the call button physically depressed on the empty bed. I reset it and turned to leave, but the heavy bathroom door, which was propped open, slowly creaked shut as if pushed by an invisible hand, and the distinct, wet sound of a labored cough echoed from behind the wood. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pushed the door back open, expecting a confused wanderer, but the small room was entirely empty and bone-dry, save for a single, steaming cup of water sitting on the sink that hadn't been there when I performed the post-mortem cleanup. Just as I backed away, the heart monitor on the wall, which wasn't connected to a single soul, suddenly roared to life, flatlining with a continuous, piercing shriek while the temperature in the room dropped so sharply I could see my own breath. I didn't wait for a second sign, I bolted for the nurse's station, and when I looked back at the security feed, the grainy black and white footage showed the silhouette of a tall, stooped man standing exactly where I had been a second before, staring directly into the lens until the screen flickered to static.